Welcome inside the Digital Hub, Denmark. Please welcome Maria Flyvbjerg, Anders Laustsen, Esben Østergaard, and Lisbeth Knudsen.
Hello everybody. This is the session that you would all like to be in, called The Road to Success. So we are going to talk about success, and I have with me here 3 very successful entrepreneurs who have all 3 of them started new companies. You have different size of company, you have different experiences, and we are going to talk about the different experiences and talk about the barriers, the success stories, and how it all puts together the story of each of the company. So I have with me Esben Østergaard from Universal Robots, one of the very few unicorns that has been created in Denmark during the last 20 years. And you have even checked out now from your child. We're going to hear more about that. Anders Laustsen, founder of Family, a children care management tool. I would say I should put it shortly. I'm sure you would put some more words to it. And we have Maria Flyvbjerg, who is co-founder of the company Spenderlog. You are a serial entrepreneur in the finance sector, the fintech business. So we are going to hear more about that. So welcome to all of you. I would like you to give the audience here an impression of how you got the idea of the company that you have developed so good and to such a success as you have it now. So let us start with you, Esben. The idea of Universal Robots, where did it come from?
So it actually came out of a number of university projects. So it's not like one person got one idea. So the group of people that were brewing on the idea were all employees at the University of Southern Denmark, where we were trying to help the shipyard at that time, making robots for shipbuilding. We could see a need for a new kind of robot that was more flexible, easy to move around, easy to use for people. And we were talking about this kind of robot. So I was an assistant professor at the university at that time. I have a PhD in robotics. And then me and one other guy called Kasper Støj and one other guy called Christian Kasser, we decided to do something about this idea. We wrote a business plan, and in 2005, Christian Kasser and me quit our jobs at university and went in full-time to make this new kind of robot. So again, the idea was simply to make robots more accessible to humans, to make it more like a tool that helps people do their work rather than a machine that kind of competes with people's jobs. And so it was a pretty simple idea. We went out to a few companies and interviewed them, looked at how they were using robots, and we could see there was a need for this kind of more flexible approach to robotics.
So how long time from you getting the idea to, so to speak, lift off, when you could see the company, how it could be developed?
Yeah, so there are several kinds of lift off. So from we talked about it first time to we founded the company, it was more like 2 years, where half a year was negotiating with the university of who owns what in this process. Then from we founded the company to we sold a robot was something like 3 years, where we had spent all our money. We were completely bankrupt, and it was not a very good robot we sold. Actually, the robots we sold at that time, they either caught fire or broke down within a week. So it was not, but we charged a lot of money for them because people were willing to pay. So, but yeah, that was not so good. We ran out of money. We were in big trouble. We got Vækstfonden to sign. We were crying while we signed that contract because it was so awful. They hired in a professional management to run the business, you can say, to be more in control of the money side. And actually, since then, we finally had the financial. We needed to start selling robots and focusing on that. it turns out that we needed to sell around 25 robots a month before it was self-sustaining. So we had no clue when we started the company that it would be so hard. We thought we could sell robots, develop better robots, sell them, and so on. We actually needed around 25 people in the company and sell around 25 robots a month before it was self-funding, you can say. And from there it was organic growth. We had more than 100% growth every year for 7 years in a row, I think, and then it went down to more like 50% growth every year. So it was really an explosive growth, and today it's more than 700 people, and we sold 4 years ago for 2.5 billion kroner at Universal Robots. We sold the company. I was still working there for some more time, but 4 months ago I quit. Yeah.
So guys, patience. That is what
process.
you could learn from that.
Yeah.
And then full speed when it's when it is really taking the right shape.
Yep.
So Anders, about the family, a few more words about the idea. How did you get the idea?
So I think the idea was a process more than just sudden enlightenment, and we just knew what we wanted to do. I started the company 6 years ago with my good childhood friend Henrik, and his little daughter started in a nursery at a time, and we saw that everything from the parents to the nursery or the daycare was small notes, paper, no one was reading it, bulletin boards, no one was looking at it, and we thought, okay, there's something that can be done here to help out and to help streamline the processes, both for the nursery staff to make it easier and more fun for them at their work, and also for the parents, of course, to be kept up to date in a way that was a little smarter than taking pictures, printing them out, and then photographing them with your iPhone afterwards. So that's sort of how it started 6 years ago, and then we sort of, it's something completely different today. So the communication aspect of family is maybe 10%. So now it's 90% is sort of administration. We call it an operating system almost for daycares, to doing everything from their finances to staff planning to tracking your child development to so various different things to still the communication, of course. So
and you have
developed over time.
And you have gone international now?
Yeah, so we started out in Denmark. We still have most of the team sitting in Denmark. We're 35 people that sits in Denmark. Now our main market is the UK, and we're doing well there. And then we're doing a little bit in Germany, and we're just starting up with a person in the US as well. So that's going to be the new venture. So even though it's the road to success, I would say we're still far from success, but we crossed the first couple of bumps on the road. But we have a long way to go still. So not doing much in Denmark, unfortunately. That's a long story. We almost kicked out of our own country, but we can talk much more about that later.
Okay, we will absolutely come back to that and hear more about that. Maria, Spenderlog, the idea to that. Please give an impression of how did it come to you?
Yeah, so Spenderlog shows you how you spend your money when you go and buy stuff at the supermarket. And basically the idea came because we could see, like my co-founder, she worked at a big bank at Nordea. She was at a lot of bank advisor meetings, and we could see that people didn't understand like how the small spending habits every day led to bigger financial consequences. Like if you had a very bad habit in the supermarket, maybe you couldn't afford your dream home or your vacation. So we wanted to like show that to the users. And that's why we developed Spenderlog. And basically we do it by fetching your receipts from the supermarket digitally, and we have some algorithms reading the text on the receipts, translating that into an overview of how much you spend on candy or potato chips or meats and vegetables.
Okay. And where are you on the road to exporting the idea? Are you going internationally with the idea?
Yeah, at some point, definitely. I think in Denmark you have to think globally. But we're starting with Denmark to prove our market because we have a very high penetration of digital receipts here, so we can actually get from all the supermarkets except from one. So this is where we start, and then we're already looking at other markets and how to expand there. I would say our first expansion, not to other markets, but to other fields, is to use the same technology, but for CO2 emissions. So instead of seeing how much money you spend on candy, you see how much the candy you bought, how much CO2 it emits, and all the other stuff you buy, obviously.
Okay. When you have a session where you talk about the road to success, there are two questions you need to ask. One is your best moment, and I think you can guess the other one, your worst moment. So your best moment, Esben?
We obviously had a lot of good moments, so we won a lot of awards and had a lot of success in Universal Robots. I think maybe the best moment for me was when we could see that this product would work. I mean, we had spent 3 years building it. We brought it out to a greenhouse. We managed to, near Odense, we managed to set it up while eating a pizza, and it took around 4 hours, and then was actually doing something useful. That was really nice to see. We also, I don't know, a lot of good moments.
Selling the company, was that a good moment?
Selling the company was a really good moment too. So somebody decided to pay 12 times our revenue for a bit, 12 times the revenue for the company, and so that was a lot of money, and we said yes to that. And that was also a nice moment. Yeah.
Okay, Anders, your best moment so far?
I think I was thinking about the question when you asked it, because for me it's been a series of small things, and I think also as an entrepreneur you're always on to the next thing almost. So there's a great moment when we had the first customer that said yes, when we got our first funding, or when we got our first nursery in the UK. But when I think back of it, there's no single moment that sort of because I think we're still very much on the move and we're still on the road, hopefully to success. So I don't think back as any like particular big moments. There's just a lot of smaller successes along the road, and I think that's and it goes same for the failures. We make mistakes every day, but as long as we learn from them and get up and move forward, then it's okay. And as long as we do it for the right reasons, also that we don't make mistakes on purpose. So for me, it's just a series of small things, and I used to say the sum of it hopefully is positive. The good decisions, the bad decisions, the sum of it needs to be positive for it all to work out. But it's not a single decision that makes or break, or a single moment that makes or break it. We get up and then we try again. And so yeah.
Yeah, I would say I agree. It's a lot like this, up and downs. But if I have to single out some moments, I would say it's definitely when we got our first users and got the first positive user feedback. When we landed the InnoBooster, which is a grant you can get to develop some innovative products. When we did our first sales to Carlsberg, which is pretty big, those kind of things. And then we just had one like today, this week, where we launched this new app called CO2 Food. But there's a lot of ups, unfortunately also a lot of downs.
Roller coaster, yeah. It is.
Okay. Could you give an advice here to startup companies, maybe here in the audience? What could be the best advice? Of course, patience is one of them, but other very good advice for people sitting here listening to you already with very good companies. What should be the best advice?
I would say it's definitely patience, but also persistence. I think we always hear about these overnight successes, and sometimes my parents are like, "Oh, but you worked for this for a couple of years. Like, shouldn't you do something else? Because this company that I just read about in the newspaper was sold for 2 billion, and they just did it like this, and this other company did it in 2 years." And then you start Googling the companies, and they have a long history before, like, I think the journalists are talking about them. So persistence is important, especially through all the downs that you experience.
During the day, we have been talking a lot about maybe lack of talent, or the problem with getting the right talent, and also about investments as capital for new companies. Have you experienced some of those problems that has been highlighted very much during the day? Talent and money.
I think for my part, so far so good. We have, as I said, 35 people in here, but I think 20 of them are not from Denmark. So I think the international aspect is extremely important. Most of them are from Europe because that's easier. We have a few from outside as well, and there we suddenly run into some issues with what we have to pay them, and whether it's a base salary or commission and stuff like that. So it gets more tricky. So far it's been good, but we also we are considering now, should we have developers outside of Denmark, because it gets harder and harder to hire. It gets more and more expensive. We have people out of school that are paid enormous amount, according to my parents. So it's a good time to be, especially a developer in Denmark. So that's the hardest for us to hire, and then next to it is, of course, international account managers. We need to find people from Germany that's actually here and want to do sales, or people from the UK that's here and want to do sales, because we've decided to do everything from here. Alternatively, we have to start an office in London or Berlin and stuff like that. So we're always considering, why are we here, and should we keep having everyone here? The easier the access to talent here, and the better reputation Copenhagen has, the easier it is to get people. But it's been manageable so far. But now we're also only 35 people. We're not several hundred people.
What about Universal Robots? Could you recruit the talent you needed for expanding the company?
That was, of course, a huge challenge, and I know Mikkel was on stage just before from Odense Robotics. We had a good collaboration with them. They now have made a job portal, and they even go on job fairs. So the Kommune goes to job fairs in Southern Europe to present all the opportunities for the robot cluster, and that attracts some people, because then they're not just moving to a company to do a career, they're moving to an environment and an ecosystem to do a career. And interesting, I mean, we're in Odense. I'm not from Odense, but I can say it's impossible to get people from Copenhagen to move to Odense, but we can get people from Portugal to move to Odense. So that helps a lot with that recruiting. And then we have people commuting also in. We of course, regarding salespeople, we couldn't find people who were willing to travel and all that. So we decided to build offices around the world where we had sales. So we have something like 27 offices, I think, all around the world now for sales staff and some technical staff for local support. That was a decision. In the beginning, we were looking for export people based here that good language and technology. It didn't. They were not there. They can't find them. That's why we went with the other approach. Talent is a huge thing. I think also it's hard to. I think the limit of salary is not. It's possible to get people to Denmark to work, but they don't feel super welcome these days, and it's a little bit. The bureaucracy is hard and all that. So I think the consequence is that there will be more and more development happening outside. And this is also what we did. At some point, we just started hiring people where we found them. So we didn't care where they were. We just made you work from there. And then it became like a global organization. And that, especially specialists, we had to do that. So we had some gear specialists or product managers that we couldn't find in Odense or in Denmark. So we just decided to hire them where they were. And that also works.
But along the way, the cluster helped you? That there were a group of companies that you could come and work for? Yeah, so we were very big part of creating the cluster. The cluster became more visible when we had the big exit. So then suddenly, there's something going on here, and that kind of created a community. So we've also been talking a lot with the local government to help us build that. And I think it has been very helpful. So, as I said, it's not just a career in one company. You actually get into a whole cluster of companies to move around, and we can that way better attract very talented people. What about the fintech cluster? Does it help you think companies like yours?
Yeah, definitely. Because the more focus we put on a field, the more focus you get as a company. And I think, for example, Copenhagen FinTech, Thomas, who was just up here before us, they've done a great job of mapping all the startups, and they also know that we exist. So if something happens that's relevant to us, they put the event or the people our way. So it definitely helped to have an ecosystem and a cluster around you.
I think for us also, just as a final comment, the universities has helped a lot because we hire a lot of young people. So, and usually when we interview people that are here, they're either here for study or they're here for love. That's the two reasons we see. And we got a lot of people now. Next week, for example, we have 2 that start full-time, Germans that start full-time, but they've been a student assistant with us for a couple of years, studied at CBS, and decided to stay in Copenhagen because they like the city. So I think also through the universities, if you have something really to offer afterwards, we shouldn't underestimate how many students we actually get here from other countries, because a lot of them really want to stay if they can stay here.
Let's talk some more about the ecosystem and the framework in Denmark for tech businesses. Digital Hub Denmark wants to create a lot of new unicorns in Denmark during the coming years. Do you think the environment and the political framework that we have in Denmark are supportive of this? And are there things we could advise the politicians to do to make the dream come true of Digital Hub Denmark to have more unicorns? Esben?
I think it's generally moving in the right direction. I mean, I think it was harder earlier than now. I think there is more. It's more cool to be an entrepreneur. There's more money that are willing to take risks. Not as much as in the US, still for sure, but it's kind of moving in the right direction. I think. Of course, there's a lot of things we can do. I don't know where to dig. Maybe we should ask here. I was in that entrepreneurial board last year. The last government had a board trying to, with Tommy Ahlers heading that, before he was a minister, trying to find out what we can do in Denmark. And actually, I thought we could agree a lot of things that Denmark shouldn't do. So don't get involved in this and that. I mean, there's so many of these public initiatives that are worth nothing.
Like what? That we shouldn't get into?
All these consultants that go around and help startups, they're just growth hubs. Yeah, it's worth
Please
nothing.
Say again, what did you say?
Væksthus.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
They don't help?
No.
Startup companies?
I think you learn 10 times more from a peer
it's
than
an insult.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm not a big fan of the tech transfer functions at universities. I think they do more bad than good, and there's no way these people are making back their money. They try to sell patents to companies and all that. And so there are some things that Denmark can do less of, I think, and then have a positive effect. I think the mindset has changed. It is so much cooler now to try to do something. It's less jantelov and more full speed ahead, I think. And I think it's moving in the right direction.
But you came from the university as a professor and made your own business. Could there be some incentives at the universities to promote people who would like to start up their own business coming from universities?
There could be, but why? I mean, why not just say they can if they want, and we don't interfere in that?
So it's not necessary with more incentives?
I think it's better they just do what they do. I mean,
get out of the way.
Get out of the way, yeah.
Okay. To create the next unicorns in Denmark, Maria, what do you think should be done?
That's a good question. Well, I think it's about supporting the entrepreneurs. Obviously, I think there's more money, but we just need even more. Like if you look at the valuation here, you can multiply them by 10 or even more if you go to the US. So it's just like valuations are not high enough. We don't have enough capital compared to outside of Denmark. I also, in the fintech field, we have banking licenses and a lot of the FSA and a lot of these regulatory systems. So I see a big synergies in big corporates collaborating with the startups or being more risk willing to, for example, implement your system or try out a new product or something like that, or collaboration. And I think we have a great environment in the startup ecosystem where people are always helpful and willing to get you on to the next level or share something if you need that. Where I think whenever I'm on the phone with a larger corporation or even just organizations where it isn't entrepreneurs, they're a little bit more closed off. It's not the same thinking in networks and how can we help each other for free. It's more thinking about how can we monetize this as fast as possible, or how do I minimize the risk. And that makes sense because when you're hired in a big organization, if you do something that sticks out and you fail, you will probably get fired. If you don't do anything and you just stick to the path a little bit, you're safe, more or less. Whereas, in the startup world, you have to stick out and you have to try out different things, and most of them will fail. So it's just two different mentalities.
But you don't ask the politicians for help. That's the conclusion here.
Yeah, I think there has been some good things. Like a very concrete thing has been some tax credit on development that we've used. So you get some money back in advance, and which has helped us a lot in terms of cash flow. But generally, no. And we were then, originally, as I talked about, almost being kicked out of Denmark. We sell to the public because 90% of daycares are run by the public in Denmark. And there, the biggest help would be, of course, to buy the product and not suddenly go together, everyone, and build their own product from scratch from one of the big consultancy companies. So that's why we have now selected markets like the UK, where it's 90% private and not 90% public. But it's just a bit of a shame as a Danish entrepreneur and taxpayer that I'm paying to something that's competing with myself. But that's another story.
All right. We have been talking a lot about AI and also how Denmark could maybe speed up the investments in AI. In a bigger scale, we are talking about Europe lagging behind the investments that China and the US are doing in that field. Do you think the Danish tech business is on top of what is happening in AI? You come from different part of the tech business. Are we in a very good shape there, or should we shape up, so to speak? Esben?
From my perspective, we're not in a very good shape. There's a lot of things we can do, but we're also not completely lost. I mean, there is a lot of knowledge in Denmark about AI and neural networks and hardware accelerated neural networks. So I think we're not completely lost. I don't know. I think we need the big data, of course, to have anything useful out of AI, and probably not many companies or institutions in Denmark have access to that volume of data that we need. So I think we're a little bit hurt by we don't have those big pools of data that is needed. I don't know, maybe you know more about this than I do, but that's at least how I see it. I think the technology we can master, it's not that advanced. I mean, it's just basically you can download it more or less for free as open source libraries and then try fiddling with it, but you need the data, of course. You need the data sets.
But we have more public data than many other countries, and it is also something that Digital Hub Denmark is working on. Your experience, Maria?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. We need the data, and we need to be more open with the data. Now we have GDPR coming in, but which can be a hindrance, but also an opportunity. And for example, we needed to collect a lot of receipts to train our artificial intelligence. So we collected all these receipts from the stores, and we took pictures of them, and we fine-tuned it. And then we also, as I mentioned before, we hook up to these digital solutions. But we've actually had quite an uphill battle here because like half of the receipts come from Starbucks, which is, it was a startup that gathers all your receipts from a lot of the supermarkets, from Netto, Føtex, Bilka, Normal, Matas, etc. And they sold to Nets, and they're not willing to share. They tried to do everything they could to prevent us from getting receipts, and it's not like we're trying to dig into their database and take all of their receipts. We have users who want to use our service and wants to see what they spent their money on, and to do that they can request, to get their Starbucks receipts in Spenderlog. And it's just been a battle where we would like to collaborate. So then it's hard to train the machines.
So making data available, the public data we have, is a very good way to start. Are there other good ideas to promote, you could say, companies developing or based on AI?
I think it's a lot about liquidity, again, cash. I see a lot of pitches of AI companies, but when you dig into it, most of them don't have AI. And that's actually also why I don't like to say the word AI, because it's like my bullshit detector goes off when I hear it. I know some really successful startups, some who are at least on the road to success, and they claim to be using AI, but when you dig into it, they're not yet. They're planning to, and I think that's one of the hurdles right now, is that we're using it so much that we're kind of overusing it. So it's not really, maybe it's not that cool to use AI as a word anymore, because it's just like,
everything goes into
Yeah.
that basket.
Yeah, is
Yeah.
it just bullshit or are we actually doing it? And then we need cash to get from, we say the word until we actually develop the neural networks and the machine learning.
Okay. Let me end by asking you, we're talking about all these unicorns that we would like to have. What role does it play to have unicorns in a country? Role models, you could call it, for other companies. Does it matter to have these big companies in a country that is famous for SMVs and having a lot of small countries? These role models, are they necessary to drive progress into the tech business, you think?
Yeah, I think it makes a massive difference. If we have companies that actually build and stay here also, we have a lot of unicorns that's traveled to the other side of the pond. The problem with that is they build big organizations, a lot of qualified people, but on the other side, so they don't then go into the ecosystem after they, build up a lot of competences at that unicorn. So what we've seen at Spotify in Sweden, for example, they have so many people sitting there now, and they're then going out into building other startups. I think you mentioned it as well with Odense and robotics. You're building a big robotics company there, and then suddenly it spurs into 100 different startups from people that have experience, and it goes into something else. So I think it's a very important part of building, and it takes time, to build unicorns and to have unicorns actually stay here and not, just have a little development office, which most of them have, and then have 1,000 people sitting in San Francisco, because that's only going to help marginally. You're going to have some Danes that are then coming back and investing, and a little bit of expertise, but you're not going to have that whole, 1,000 people that suddenly has a lot of knowledge about everything and goes into build other startups and join other startups and stuff. So we need the first couple of good ones to get things going, and I think that's what we've seen with robotics, but we need the same thing. I don't think we've seen the same at scale in Copenhagen yet.
Did you spend time mentoring other companies while you were in Universal Robots?
I was part of the startup hub at Odense Robotics, so where we take in companies and we decide if they should go in or be kicked out or go back and redo their business plan. And then if they get in, they sit in a shared office with other startups, and they're managed by their own business plan. If they don't deliver according to their own milestones, they get kicked out again. And there's a whole, it's actually a pretty good accelerator, because more than half of the people, the companies we let in seem to get traction. So that's a very good hit rate. And I've been part of that from beginning together with Mikkel. So yeah, I think that whole ecosystem is important. I was just thinking also about what is a Danish company and what is the Vækstfond's role here, because yes, Unity moved to San Francisco. We stayed but got bought by a US-based company. And I think as soon as you have Vækstfonden involved, and they were involved in a lot because that was the best way to get funding before there was any, you can say, other funding available, then they always have to exit again. And if you have that situation, you need to have a buyer, and if the company is successful, it has to be a big buyer, and there aren't that many Danish companies who have a strategy to buy, you can say, big startups. So that will naturally lead to everything is kind of sold, and that's not good.
But I think that sell out too early. I think, Mark, we don't have the guts sometimes to stay in there, hang in there, and really take the big bet.
But I'm also thinking we have a number of people now that has enough money to go all the way. And if we, when we made Mir, so I was not the founder of Mir, but I invested in Mir at Universal after I sold Universal Robots, and we didn't invite the Vækstfonden in there. So we also sold that, but we didn't have to sell it. We just got a very good price for it. So if we can get more of these companies that are not owned by somebody who has to sell again, that of course will also mean that the more will stay and become unicorns here.
Okay. Well, 2 years from now, where are you?
That's a good question. A lot of things.
Still with Spenderlog, or
I think
with another company?
We just heard it takes a while to build a company, so probably still with Spenderlog. Hopefully, selling a lot and doing very well in Denmark.
Okay.
And also outside of, obviously, but trying to keep everyone in Denmark.
Anders, 2 years from now, family, where is it?
It's a long time, but I'm still going to be the CEO of family, and I think it's still, as long as it's a fun ride, which has been, we're going to have US as the biggest market, hopefully, in 2 years' time.
But with offices in Denmark.
Yeah, we will have some people in Denmark, definitely. And then, but we will also have an office in New York or in the US of some sort. But yeah, there's a long way to go, and we're far from finished. So yeah, we're still going in 2 years' time.
So, Esben, you have to answer the question. 2 years from now, where are you?
Oh, that's a good question. So I quit my job recently. I have enough money, so I don't need to worry about that, and also my kids don't need to worry about that. So the question is, I have to fill in meaning in my own life, and how do I do that? And then my wife put me in front of the FN's verdensmål, what is that, UN goals. SDGs, yeah, this Christmas. She said, what are you going to do about this now? And
okay,
then,
that's a huge task.
That's a challenge, yeah. So what we did is we started a company that invests in robotic technology startups and also do consultancy work, because I know about robots, and I believe that we can make the world a better place through robots. I don't believe in rolling back technology to 200 years back, because we can't feed the population we have today. And so the only humane way forward for humanity is through more technology. I can contribute with robots. I believe strongly that it's helping humanity, not making lives worse, even though it's not automatic. You can't say technology always makes lives better, but it can make life better, so we have to manage that. And so that's what we're going to do. And then half of all the earnings of that new company goes to charity.
Okay, thank you very much. Please give them a hand. Thank you.